18. So we allow about 20 minutes per motion. We allow 20 minutes per motion, which means about 5 people will debate on each motion, and then we resolve. There's no need to debate the whole day on a motion that we are all agreed. So we will start with a motion which is put number 1 on this paper. Is the motion now. The mover is not even here. Mbo. So go to the next motion, which is the motion congratulating the Federal Republic of Ethiopia and the Tigray People's Liberation Front on the signing of the peace agreement moved by blah blah. And I call upon, who is the mover of this one? Venani. Venani is not in the chamber.
Honorable President.
Yes.
Honorable Majodini moved the motion and she was seconded by Honorable Venani. And she
was seconded. The one on Ethiopia. There's not. This is the one who people who captured got it wrong. Because they are saying Majodina moved the. Yes, but this is serious for a parliament to take a wrong record. It's serious for a parliament, and who is responsible for this? That Honorable Majodina moved on Ethiopia and Venani is seconded. That is a fatal mistake because it's totally wrong. But I want to know who is this person who recorded this? Mr. Clerk, who records this? Because this is totally wrong. Can you come to the chair? Yeah, sorry for the delay. We are trying to organize ourselves. Most people who moved the motions are not in the chamber. Anyway, we start with the Honorable Majordina motion on DRC and Rwanda. So, Honorable Majordina can take the floor.
Thank you very much, Honorable President, Honorable Vice President Ango, all members of this august House. Let me take this opportunity to greet you in this raining morning. Thank you very much for the opportunity, as I did yesterday, to move this motion calling for immediate peace and end of conflict in DRC. Allow me, Honorable President, to read the motion, but also, as I read this motion, I want to call on all the parties that are involved on the DRC conflict to respect, support the initiative that is already in place, the Rwanda Peace Initiative, as well as the Nairobi Peace Initiative. We are quite aware that already there are some means of bringing peace and stability in that area. I read the first part of the motion yesterday. Let me just continue to finish up. Honorable President, we further deeply concerned that the effects of the conflict are not restricted to DRC Congo, but are also souring diplomatic relations, as I said yesterday. Noting that one of the objectives behind the formation of the Organization of African Unity was to ensure that African states is in defense of security and respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of each state, and for its an inalienable right to independent existence. Acknowledging and uploading the decision of government of Kenya, Uganda, Burundi, and South Sudan under the auspices of the East Africa Community to send their armies to fight these rebels, terrorists, and vigilante groups alongside the army of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Honorable members, Honorable President, we are deeply concerned about the escalation of this conflict and the brutality of the rebels, which is targeting the mineral-rich provinces in the north and south of DRC, resulting in the displacement of thousands of citizens. We call upon African Union to call an urgent peace and security summit to discuss the DRC conflict, as they've already started with the Rwanda and as well as the Nairobi peace. Noting Africa's long-standing principle of solidarity, a long-standing practice which enjoins Africa to adopt common positions on issues which affect the continent, and the Pan-African Parliament slogan on One Africa, One Voice in resolving challenges. We call upon all 5 regions of the African continent to deploy their troops to protect the independence and the sovereignty of the DRC and to protect the lives of the citizens. Further call upon all cessation of the hostilities in DRC and immediate withdrawal of all parties supporting the rebels. Therefore, we call upon this House to adopt this motion, notwithstanding to give all the support to the initiatives that have already been started. I so move, Honorable President.
Thank you. Right. I know it was seconded. Who was the seconder? Who want to debate? Does the seconder want to further motivate the motion? Anyone who wants to, right, I recognize Honorable Muntaka and then Honorable Sampa.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, let me say that this is a very sensitive issue, and I rise to second the motion that this Honorable House should resolve to encourage the African leaders, especially in that part of the continent, to respect the already existing peace initiatives that will help bring peace in that area. I want to take this opportunity, Mr. President, to urge our colleagues, especially in the chamber, both from Rwanda and DRC, to be measured in their contribution. I'm sure that my sister from South Africa, who chose to bring this motion, brought it in good faith, trying to help all of us to appreciate what is happening in that part of Africa and the challenges that confront them. And as we have always insisted here in this chamber, anything that touches the eyes, the nose will run. Anything that touches Zimbabwe touches Ghana. Anything that affects Rwanda equally affects DRC. So in that spirit, I will urge my colleagues from these two countries to be extra measured in their contribution. I know it can get emotional, it can be very painful, especially when everybody is holding his or her truth. You know, in a conflict, everybody has his or her truth. And if everybody wants to insist that his or her truth is the only truth, it can lead to confrontation. And we are hoping that in their contribution, they will be measured. I know yesterday there's a report that shows that there was a jet fighter flying over the airspace of Rwanda, and it is suspected to be a fighter jet from DRC. It means that if we, the African people, do not wake up quickly to try to intervene, try to talk to our brothers and sisters from both countries to be measured, before we realize, we will be destroying ourselves. I just want to add this. Our brothers and sisters from DRC and Rwanda, and in any other part of the continent, should know that there are people who do not want to see us together. There are people who do not want to see us united. There are people who want to constantly sow seed of disunity among us. So even if I hurt my brother, next neighbor Togo, he should be measured in his response so that I will realize that, oh, I erred. But if we go an eye for an eye, before we realize, all of us will be blind. Because I take one of his eyes, he takes one of mine. I go back to take his second one, then he takes mine. Then before we realize, all of us will be blind. And I don't think that's the situation that we will expect to see in that part of Africa. Because as we all know, it can easily de-escalate into other areas. Because, I mean, believe me or not, Rwanda has sister friends within the continent. DRC has sister friends within the continent. Before we realize, then South Africa says, I'm for DRC. Ghana says, I'm for Rwanda. Then we begin to split ourselves. And before long, then it engulfs the whole of the continent. I don't think that will be in our national interest. At this moment where we are having so much challenges after post-COVID, with the Ukraine and war, with the way dollar is really punishing the African continent, this is the least that we should expect, that there will be this kind of confrontation between two sister countries. It is our prayer that hers will cool off and then we will let wisdom prevail. Mr. President, I thank my sisters sincerely for bringing this to our attention, and I hope that each and every one of us, when you get the opportunity to speak, will be reconciliatory so that we will try to calm nerves. Let's know, I know many people may have so many facts, so many people may have so many truths. If you want to vent all of them in this chamber, we may not end up achieving the purpose for which this motion was brought. So I want to thank her sincerely for drawing our attention, and I hope that all of us will be measured in our contribution. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Now, following this contribution, can we all put our hands down? Following this contribution, it becomes very instructive to the chair that only those from DRC and Rwanda are full information. All others can join, we can all join, but we may actually be spoiling the broth. The broth, which is the Rwanda Peace Initiative and the Nairobi Peace Initiative. I'm thinking of two things. When we have a situation like this in the future, because we want to build peace, and not use this chamber to put more fires on the conflicts, I'm actually persuaded that, considering that we are all mature people and serious Africans, we should allow DRC delegation and Rwanda delegation to sit in the committee room, something there, and also compare some notes. Compare notes. Just to say, you know, you did this, you can't do no, this. I think let's allow PAP also as a place for peace building, rather than for conflict deepening. I will allow Honorable Gabala, I'll allow Honorable Bideli, leaders of those delegations, to say something in the spirit of peace, and even encourage them to talk after after this sitting, two of them or as delegation, in the spirit of building peace, and not explode the situation. I'm aware Honorable Sampa wanted to take the floor. I will not deny you. Thank you. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm grateful with your guidance. I'll be very brief in seconding the motion raised by Honorable Pemi Majodina on the conflict in Congo DR. The history, Mr. President, we know it goes back to the late Patrice Lumumba. May his soul rest in peace. We know the circumstances that he was captured to Europe and Belgium, handcuffed there. There are still pictures that we all can relate to. Mr. President, the real issue here is who is behind this? Who is at the core of this conflict in DR? Not only in DR, it even goes to West Africa, where we're having a lot of coups in countries like Guinea, Mali, and others. I wish to put it on record, Mr. President, that the real problem, we all players as Africans, and citizens of these countries are just players. The real players at the core of this conflict in Africa, particularly DRC, Congo, are the West, in particular France, Belgium, and USA. And the question is why? Let's not quote the issue, or not deep down to the issue where it is. What do they look for in Africa? We know it's because of the mineral resources that we have. Look at anywhere in Africa where there's a conflict. It's either there's minerals or there's oil. Two things, oil or minerals. In Congo DRC's case, we know there's huge resources of gold, diamond, and copper. It so happens that Zambia shares the same rock of copper underground, extends it to Congo, into Katanga. So they want our minerals. And to do it, how do they do it? They divide and rule us. They divide countries against countries. Then they divide citizens against citizens, from one province to another. They dig into our tribal differences or ethnicism and make us fight against each other. They sponsor. That is the truth. And that is what is happening. A rich country like DRC Congo has hardly seen peace. If you look at the Gini coefficient ratio, most people are in abject poverty. Same as Zambia, same as elsewhere. Wherever there's mineral, you find the majority are poor. And yet you have a few imperialists. We obtained a lot of political independence in Africa, but we are still enslaved economically. They still hold our minerals, and they still hold our oil. Wherever there's a coup, just know it's the oil or gold at play. So that said, as I support this motion, I thought I'd bring to the attention of this honorable house that indeed there are conflicts in DRC Congo, but until Belgium, France, USA, and even the East stay away of Africa business, stay away from our gold, stay away from our diamond, stay away from our oil, Africa is hardly going to see peace. I wish to second this motion, and I thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
Yes, I don't think we need to over-debate this motion. I will allow Honorable Kabila and Honorable Bideli to lead us. Start. Okay, go ahead, Rwanda. Thank you.
Thank you, Right Honorable President, the Vice President, the Honorable Members of Parliament. I thought we would use the ladies first approach, but now it has become a gentleman first. I think that's a good indication that, Honorable President, this forum should be used to build peace, but not to deepen the existing conflicts that are within our continent. While I've been given the opportunity to talk about this motion, let me thank you sincerely for giving us an opportunity to be able to inform the honorable members the situation in that region, a very beautiful region where we have people that are magnanimous, both on the side of Congo and on the side of Rwanda. So it's unfortunate that we have this conflict. We've been neighbors for very, very many years, and we've never had conflicts until I think the arrival of the colonial powers. So that's a big problem, but I think, like we say, Africans should be able to understand their own problems and also find their own solutions. Having said that, the motion before the House, I hope, is intended to come up with sustainable solutions to peace and security in the DRC, in particular the eastern part of DRC. But it's also important to bring to the attention of this House the continued presence of over 120 local and foreign armed terror groups in that region, including some that pose a threat to the peace and security of Rwanda. In particular, I'm talking about the FDLR that actually committed genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda in 1994, that took refuge in the DRC in 1994, and they continue to disseminate this particular ideology even in that particular region. Therefore, in my view, focusing attention to three armed groups, as to why yesterday, as is the intention of this motion, may not actually resolve the problem. Neither will it provide peace and security in that particular region. So I think the approach should generally be holistic if we are to look for a sustainable solution on peace and security in that particular region. Let me also bring to the attention of this House that Rwanda, under these tensions, has acted with a lot of restraint, despite a lot of provocation by DRC. Yesterday, as this motion brought before this House was being drafted, at exactly 11:20 a.m., a fighter jet of the government of DRC in violation of Rwandan airspace, as ably mentioned by my neighbor here from Ghana, touched down at Rubavu Airport in the western province of Rwanda, which is actually at the border between DRC and Rwanda, and immediately took off for the DRC. No military action was taken by the government of Rwanda, despite the fact that it has the capability to have acted. Now, this incursion follows other provocations following cross-border shelling of Rwanda territory, killing people and destroying property. This happened on 19th March 2022. It happened again on 23rd May 2022 and on the 10th June 2022. So these are provocations that Rwanda was able to restrain from acting, which in itself is an indication that Rwanda is looking for peace and not for tension in that particular region. So these unacceptable incidents are happening when diplomatic efforts are underway in Rwanda and in Nairobi, as ably mentioned by the Pan-African President. And Rwanda believes, and this has been stated by His Excellency Paul Kagame, even in a recent United General Assembly meeting in New York, of the need to resolve the crisis in Eastern DRC through political means by approaching the problem from the root cause of insecurity in that particular region. So the blame game that has been recurring over the years may not be the solution, rather collaboration by regional and international partners to counter and eradicate the over 120 armed groups existing in that particular region that not only pose insecurity in DRC, but also pose insecurity in the whole region. So this is an approach that should be supported by all organizations and institutions that are looking for sustainable peace and security. Therefore, in my view, there is a need to pursue dialogue and the escalation and the use of effective national, regional, and international mechanisms to resolve the disputes that exist. The Rwanda Peace Initiative, started by the President of Angola, who is also the chairperson of the ICGLR, on the 6th of July 2022 in Rwanda, was able to bring both presidents together, President Paul Kagame and President Paul Tshisekedi, and we hope that this provides hope for resolving some of the tensions that still exist in that particular region. The Nairobi Peace Roadmap, also initiated by the former President of Kenya, His Excellency Uhuru Kenyatta, on April 21, 2022, and now being pursued by the current chairman of the East African Community, His Excellency Evariste Ndayishimiye of the Republic of Burundi, provides avenues for dialogue and search for political solution to the problem in Eastern DRC. And those efforts should be supported by all people that are interested in getting or in arriving at peace and security in that particular region. So as I conclude, Right Honorable President, let me state that Rwanda remains committed to the establishment of regional mechanisms, including the expanded joint verification mechanisms that actually patrols the common border of Rwanda, and the GMV actually provides information on troop movement on either side of the border. So these are all existing mechanisms that can help us to resolve some of these issues. So this House should be guided by facts and not hearsay, because this is a House of records. Honorable members, as you debate this motion, you should be guided by reason and not emotions, and I call upon you to give a chance to the peace initiatives already underway under the Rwanda and Nairobi peace initiatives initiated by the heads of state. I submit, Right Honorable President. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We want to build peace. PAP should build peace and not cause conflicts. Thank you for that submission. I now call upon Honorable Janet Kabila.
Merci.
Thank you, Right Honorable President, for the floor. Let me begin by saying thank you to you for having come up with this motion so that it could be discussed together here, and take this opportunity to thank Honorable Majora for the peace and security, Majodina, sorry. And we support every single effort that you're making to try and bring peace to the DRC, my country, the Nairobi Initiative, Rwanda, Burundi, and Nairobi. So, Honorable President, I think I need to maybe give a background of my country's history and the region of the Great Lakes. As the DRC, we went through a dictatorship that lasted 32 years. We do appreciate that there was a genocide in Rwanda in 1994. I will not go back to the history of 1951 or 1976, because we all said it was a sad period that that area went through, where people lost their lives. So we as Congolese, of course, we are a country that welcomes refugees. The international community requested us to open our borders to welcome refugees, mostly the Hutu ones. They came, to our country and the efforts made by the government of the time to then repatriate them, they were frustrated by the same international community. In 1997, it was the time when we fought for the freedom of our country after 32 years of dictatorship. There was the war that led to the freedom of our country, at the head of which was the late President Gabala. 1 year, 3 months later, in 1978, we went through a rebellion of the RCD Goma, supported by our neighbors, Rwanda. They supported this rebellion. 1998 up to 2001, our third president was assassinated. That is Honorable Gabala. Despite all the efforts made by countries of the SADC grouping, whom I thank again, I know that we have discussed this matter here, and we'll come back to it later. When the third president was assassinated, the war went on, and you know the history. So we went to elections, and then we got another president, Joseph Kabila. He was only 29 years old at the time, 29. And it was thanks to him, after all these trials and tribulations, that we initiated a dialogue. We discussed it. We started that discussion here in South Africa, where we held talks with the RCD movement from Goma and other opposition groupings. Honorable President, Right Honorable President, from 1998 to 2003, RCD Goma occupied the east of the DRC, that is northern Kivu, and which is and also a part of southern Kivu. RCD Goma, they occupied this part of the DRC with the support of our neighbor Rwanda, and they stayed there 5 years and never been able to actually get rid of a grouping. I don't know how I can describe them. These are Rwandese who were guilty of genocide. They came to our country, as I explained earlier, as I explained to this August Assembly, but they never left for 5 years. And LDR is still there 5 years later. If they couldn't do it for 5 years while they were on our land, then, Honorable President, why are we still talking about it today? My apologies if I say that this is in bad faith, because they killed a lot of people, a lot of Congolese, more than the Rwandese. FDLR operates in our territory. We have 2,500,000 kilometers. I think there are countries that are bigger than Congo, but ours is so big that sometimes we have challenges managing it. So these are the problems that we have. Rwanda stated that there have been attempts to attack their country, but I don't really know if there's been one single day where the Honorable who spoke can explain to us. I'm not really asking for an answer, but he can tell us when this movement actually entered their territory, because we went through a new government where we have the president and 4 vice presidents in our quest for peace and reconstruct our country. So we cannot imagine any development of a given country or a region if there's no peace. So we went through that period up to 2006, where we the very first democratic elections were organized in our country. That was 45 years post-independence. So all the problems which were discussed with the part in Goma, or what we have, M23, all these problems were resolved, Right Honorable President. But in 2013, M23 that we are mentioning today was beaten by the Congolese army, the armed forces of the DRC. And over all these years, they also they actually published a communique which said they were not going to continue with the war, and they're going to work towards peace and good governance in their country. But what is surprising, Honorable President, is that today we're talking about M23, which had been defeated and was not operating for 23 years. So really, we think that it's our neighbor, Rwanda, which is actually supporting this group. Well, we have several other armed groups, but that is not a problem. But the major problem is M23, supported by our neighbor, Rwanda. We have no choice but to live together. As I had stated, we support the efforts towards peace that are being made today. But let me make a proposal so that we take note of that. Seeing that FDLR is made up of Rwandese, maybe Rwanda should make an effort to discuss with them, because they are Rwandese citizens, they're not Congolese. They are in the DRC, but they remain citizens of Rwanda.
That's what I had today. Honorable President, I say if, because my brother said it, we have all those groups, and I'm going to say it directly to him so that he may listen. As we say, you hear it from the horse's mouth. We want them also to dialogue with the FDLR, who are remnants of the ancient groups from Rwanda. They are Rwandese people. They've killed more people in Congo than in Rwanda. We have lost more than 6 million people in Congo. So I would suggest that be put on record. That's one of the solutions. It's not talking about Congo should negotiate with the M23 only. They need to negotiate with the FDLR and get them out of our country. Because we have 9 neighbors, Honorable Speaker, but we only have a problem with our neighbor, Rwanda. We are condemned to live together. We cannot displace Rwanda, neither can we displace Congo. So let's go forward and look for a durable solution. I hope this time it will be really durable solution, because Congolese have suffered a lot, and we are not enemies with the Rwandese people, but I think it's the problem of the system. And I hope that all these efforts that are being done are going to bring peace and stability in the country for a true economic integration of the African continent. I thank you.
We clap for the 2 presenters. Peace building can be complex, very complex. The 2 have spoken, and we have heard them. It is enough. We've got enough. We've heard from both sides. You are both very competent minds. I think the information they are sharing is very critical, and I want to thank both of them. You didn't turn out to be emotional and bursting. You debated very well. You debated really professionally, cool, collected, composed, and we encourage that. I know whenever Bideri may say, no, I think I need to know. What I want to encourage is within PAP, have lunch together. You're going to have lunch together or dinner. And nicely, and we can even invite 2 other people, 3 other people, and just chat. And say, my dear, what you said there, not emotionally, I would love that to happen. Right. This, one writer said there's a concept called a container of emotions. This chamber is a container of emotions. That is where we can offload emotions, but in a civilized manner. And we have done it in a civilized manner. I thank both of you. It is good that we have spoken in this manner. The 2 countries have spoken. I now encourage you to have time together and keep talking nicely. And then you share what you are discussing with your authorities also. It can help us. We can even engage after this if you want, so that we sharpen everything. Can we now move to I don't think I would want this issue of adopting a motion of this nature. This is just sharing information. I think you would rather talk more, and if we want, you can come back to the chair and say, after our talks, we've agreed on this, and we want the chamber to adopt what we've agreed. That would be a better way to proceed. But for food for thought. That's food for thought. I now move to, I see Honorable Felix in the chamber. I was waiting for him anxiously. He's now in the chamber. The motion on Ethiopia was moved by yourself? Yes, can you proceed with that motion?
Mr. President, honorable members, I rise to move a motion congratulating the Federal Republic of Ethiopia and the Tigray People's Liberation Front on the signing of the peace agreement. Mr. President, I hereby, in terms of Rule 61, move this House to note the recent positive development which resulted in the signing of peace agreement between the Federal Republic of Ethiopia and the Tigray People's Liberation Front in the AU facilitated mediation process in Pretoria, Republic of South Africa on the 3rd November 2022. Further noting that the conflict between the Federal Republic of Ethiopia and the Tigray People's Liberation Front had developed into a full-blown civil war, resulting in the death of thousands of people, spawning one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world, leaving thousands dead, displacing more than 2 million people, and giving rise to a wave of atrocities, including sexual violence and starvation. Noting with great appreciation that representatives from both sides of the Ethiopia's war agreed to a permanent cessation of hostilities, the disarmament of fighters, the unhindered humanitarian access to Tigray, the repairing of essential services in the region, the provision of a framework for accountability and justice, and the restoration of some semblance of stability in the country. Further noting that this agreement restored the long-held standing reputation of the Federal Republic of Ethiopia as a symbol of peace and African unity. Congratulating the Federal Republic of Ethiopia and the Tigray People's Liberation Front for their maturity in choosing peace instead of war, and for ensuring that they accept the African facilitated solutions to African problems. Further congratulating the African Union mediation led by the His Excellency President Olusegun Obasanjo, former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, to their stewardship and impartiality, which became a hallmark of this peace agreement. appreciating the salient role of the government of the Republic of South Africa for agreeing to host these peaceful negotiations and for providing a peaceful and conducive environment for negotiations leading to this agreement. Calling upon the Federal Republic of Ethiopia, the Tigray People's Liberation Front, and all parties involved to respect and abide by this agreement for the betterment of the citizens of Ethiopia and the continent of Africa as a whole. Therefore, call upon this August House to debate and adopt this motion, congratulating the federal government of the Republic of Ethiopia and the Tigray People's Liberation Front for signing peace agreement which ended the civil war in Ethiopia. I beg to move, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. You are done, eh?
I can, maybe to justify?
Sorry, to justify?
Yeah.
More, I think that's enough.
Okay.
That's enough. It's a good motion. So something good need not defended too much. We can invite 2-3 speakers just to support, and then we adopt the motion. Honorable Algeria.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I should like to congratulate honorable members for this motion concerning peace in Africa. I emphasize the crucial role of the Pan-African Parliament in finding solutions to conflicts that the continent has experienced, and that gives us the opportunity to have debates and to build peace. And it is also about brotherhood and solidarity in Africa. Dialogue and discussions and peace are the most important elements, and many regions that have experienced difficulties have been able to enter into dialogue. So we need to adopt these thoughts and emphasize the importance of this Parliament and of the role of the President of Parliament, so that efforts be made in order to put an end to any kind of conflict, and so that love and peace can be restored. We congratulate Ethiopia for this agreement, and we also thank the African Union under the auspices of President Obasanjo that approved the neutrality aspect and the restoring of peace. I emphasize once again the role of the Pan-African Parliament, and I congratulate the President for this initiative. And this is about safeguarding interests of the African people. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I can see Honorable Patrick Uganda.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, the significance of Ethiopia in the African continent cannot be underestimated. The economy of Ethiopia is one of the economies we are proud about in Africa. When you see how they've been progressing over the years, as Pan-African Parliament, Ethiopia sits the AU. The headquarters of the AU is in Ethiopia. So anything that affects Ethiopia in terms of peace is a concern to the people of Africa. We want to congratulate the people of Ethiopia, especially the honorable members of Ethiopia who are here with us. Our Vice President from the East African Caucus, Dr. Gayo, for this effort. The fact that members can be here, Mr. President, with the hope that conflict is resolved in their country is a big, big thing for us and for them. We congratulate you, our colleagues, for that that happened to you. But, Mr. President, we have had similar efforts before, and they do not yield the expected results. Efforts like this have been there before, and people go back to conflict. I want to plead to the parties in Ethiopia to prioritize this method of handling issues other than the gun. We do not manufacture guns in Africa. These guns are manufactured elsewhere. Every time we use them against our own people, we are just promoting economies of those people that manufacture these guns and weapons. So, Mr. President, as the Pan-African Parliament, this is the way to go. For whichever conflict there is on the continent, this is how we must be seen to handle it. That's why I want to thank the AU and those that participated in this process. Congratulations, Ethiopia.
Let us resolve, let us adopt and we'll present. Okay, last speaker I can see, Honorable Matole will be the last speaker.
Honorable President and honorable members, this House should recall that Ethiopia is one country which was not defeated by the imperialists. In 1896, it was Ethiopia that defeated the fascist forces, Italian forces under Mussolini. And that victory of Ethiopia is the victory that reawakened all African people, that these imperialists are not invincible. And therefore, Ethiopia motivated all our people to fight for their liberation. 1935, when Mussolini again occupied Ethiopia, the whole of Africa, including Asia, stood up and said, the defeat of Ethiopia is the defeat of all people in the third world. And that's why African people, led by Ethiopia and Ghana, worked for the establishment of the AU. The imperialist forces and new imperialist forces today, they know that if they can destabilize Ethiopia and destabilize West Africa, the only part of the continent left would be Southern Africa. So this attack on Ethiopia and West Africa is an attack on all of us. And I therefore want to call on all member states of the African Union to know that these forces against Ethiopia, the DRC, Rwanda, West Africa, Mozambique, are the forces which want to reverse the gains of our struggles which we waged for more than a century. Therefore, I call on this House to say this is a threat against all of us and all our people, and we should all stand together, bury our differences and deal with them as in-house differences, but face the enemy together. I thank you very much.
You have put it so well. You have put it so well and given me a homework. I'll tell you how I'll answer and reply to the homework. Can we now adopt the motion? can it be properly written finally? I wish the submission by Professor Matole was an appendix to the motion. And it's our intention to hand it over to the chief negotiator, His Excellency, former President of Nigeria, Obasanjo Olusegun, who will be in this chamber this morning around 11:30. So, Honorable Matole, can you put in writing the exact words that you said without addition or subtraction? Put them in writing, give them to the Secretariat. Give the Secretariat, we want to put it as an appendix to the motion. Thank you very much, Honorable Felix from Uganda, for moving this motion. It is adopted. We have another motion on Mozambique, motion on solidarity and support for the government and the people of Mozambique. I call upon you to proceed.
Muito obrigado, Excelência, Sr.
Thank you very much, Excellency Mr. President, Excellencies, Vice Presidents, distinguished members of this Parliament. I would like to start by thanking the President for allowing me to submit this motion in this chamber. To gain time, I will directly go to the motion. Motion on solidarity in support to the Republican people of Mozambique. Under the terms of the Pan-African rules, we bring to this House the following. This Parliament has witnessed with concern that Mozambique, a member of this Parliament, is a victim of terrorist actions from 2017, specifically in the province of Cabo Delgado. And as you know, people, defenseless people, are being killed, property is being destroyed, and development is being prevented, and the well-being of families has been affected. People are forced to leave their villages, and they are displaced people in other districts and provinces. The Parliament has noted with concern that these terrorist actions have taken on alarming dimensions that have been recognized because of their impact, that are an impediment for the efforts that are being made by governments towards the Africa that we all want, one Africa, one voice, and they are a threat to peace in our continent. These are prerequisites for development in our continent, and they will affect our realization of the objectives. So strongly condemns the acts that have been committed by terrorists against the people of Mozambique, particularly women, children, and elderly. It also condemns those that are funding, arming, and instigating terrorism and violent extremism in Mozambique and in Africa in general. Expresses its deep condolences to the government and people of Mozambique and other countries of Africa that have victims from these terrorist actions. It repeats the support that Mozambique has received from African Union countries in the face of these terrorist acts that from 2017 have already caused more than 2,000 dead people and displaced peoples. It intends that this expression of support and fighting terrorism in Mozambique should be extended to actions to defense forces so that Mozambique will have a political, moral, and other support that is important to fight terrorism in Cabo Delgado. It encourages the heads of state and government in Africa to continue working tirelessly to help the government and people of Mozambique to fight against terrorism and violent extremisms that is threatening the whole region of the SADC. it urges the Pan-African Parliament to debate at this session the motion against terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. I so propose, Excellency Mr. President. This motion has been supported by our Professor Matole, who has helped us to draft this motion. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
We will allow you maybe with 1 or 2 other speakers, then we adopt. Professor Matole.
Honorable President and distinguished members, the people of Mozambique, like all other colonial peoples in Africa, waged wars of resistance against violent dispossession of their land and their natural resources. The African monarchs who led these wars were defeated and their people were enslaved and colonized. For more than a century, African people waged wars of national liberation for the achievement of political, social, and economic self-determination. I do not have to recall the protracted struggle led by Frelimo in Mozambique. African people, with the exception of the Sawari Republic, have achieved their right of political self-determination. The AU theme for 2022 calls on member states to build resilience in nutrition and accelerate human, social, and economic development. The achievement of these strategic objectives requires peace and security. I second the motion of solidarity and support to the government and people of the Republic of Mozambique, which is not selfish. This motion is not selfish. It condemns not only the cowardly acts committed by the terrorists against the people of Mozambique, particularly women, children, and the elderly, but it also condemns imperialist and neo-imperialist forces who finance, arm, and instigate terrorism and violent extremism in Mozambique and in other parts of Africa. It is not enough, therefore, Honorable President, to express the most sincere condolences to the government and people of Mozambique and other countries in Africa who are victims to these terrorist attacks. It is also not enough to commend the African Union for its support for other parts of for Mozambique and other parts of Africa. Lastly, Honorable President, I want to call on African governments and people to reawaken to the fact that the conflicts, unconstitutional changes, and terrorist attacks in Africa are part of the struggle of the imperialist and neo-imperialist forces for the control of African natural resources, which are the prerequisites for the social and economic development of Africa, which the people of Mozambique are not able to achieve because of these barbaric acts. In conclusion, Honorable President, I submit that Africa cannot and will not achieve peace and security until we end foreign ownership of our land and natural resources by foreigners. Africans must regain ownership of their land and natural resources and develop the capacity to beneficiate them and market the product for the benefit of Africans, not foreigners. Last but not least, the AU must condemn the European imperialist and neo-imperialist forces for their instigation and support of unconstitutional changes and terrorism in Africa, which impede the human, social, and economic development of the continent. I submit that maybe this matter should be escalated to the UN so that the UN adopts a new resolution on African control of her land and natural resources, so that these conflicts and competition for our land and natural resources should stop. I submit, Honorable President and distinguished members.
Thank you again. We have brought in the dimension of escalating to the UN. It is not part of the motion, but if the House resolves as such, then we can make that addendum and move forward. Any contrary view to the escalation of the matter to the UN? Is the matter supported? So we adopt. So the escalation to the UN again, Professor Matore, do that part of it to the additional to the motion so that it looks smart. No, I want Uganda now. The motion on Uganda. Who is the mover? Right. We move on to the motion for a resolution of the Pan-African Parliament to support the East African crude oil pipeline project under Rule 6760 of the Rules of Procedure of the Pan-African Parliament. Honorable Felix.
Honourable members, I rise to move a motion for a resolution of the Pan-African Parliament to support the East African crude oil pipeline project under Rule 60 of our Rules of Procedure. Whereas the Constitutive Act of the Pan-African African Union recognized the struggles of our forefathers in establishing our respective economic independence and promoting socio-economic development of Africa, recognizing that among the objectives of the Constitutive Act of the African Union is to promote and defense of our common positions and issues of interest to the Pan-African Parliament and the continent of Africa in general. Further recognizing that it is our objective to promote sustainable development at economic, social and cultural levels, integration of the African continent. Considering that Article 17 of the Constitutive Act of the African Union established the Pan-African Parliament, further considering that Article 2 and 3 of the Protocol to the Treaty established the African Economic Community relating to the Pan-African Parliament provides for the objectives and functions of Pan-African Parliament as set out in the Protocol to Abuja Treaty and the Protocol to the Treaty establishing African Economic Community relating to the Pan-African Parliament. Aware that the establishment of Pan-African Parliament is informed by a vision to promote a common platform for Africa's people and their grassroots organizations to be more involved in discussions and decision-making on the problems and challenges facing African continent. Further aware that it is our duty to contribute to a more prosperous future for the people of Africa by promoting collective, self-reliant and economic recovery. Noting that it is our collective duty to promote economic independence of our countries and hence ensure prosperity of our peoples. Having regard to the agreement adopted at the 21st Conference of Parties to the COP21 in Paris and on 12 December 2015, the Paris Agreement, the special reports of the International Panel on Climate Change, and in particular its 6th assessment report and synthesis report up thereto, the final declaration of the 6th European Union Summit of 17th to 18th February 2022, entitled Joint Vision for 2030. Further, having regard to the European Parliament resolution on Uganda and Tanzania linked to the investments in the fossil oil project, cognizant that such a resolution is an affront on the sovereignty of Uganda and Tanzania, having regard to the European Parliament resolution on the 20th October 2022 on the UN Climate Change Conference in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, COP27, the African, Caribbean, and Pacific States European Union Joint Parliamentary Assembly resolution adopted on the 2nd November 2022 in Maputo, Mozambique, acknowledging that climate change and its impact must be addressed by all African states, further acknowledging the need for the world to work together to address climate change impacts, noting the negligible contribution by Africa to the greenhouse gas emission, which is less than 3% of the world total greenhouse gas emissions. Further, noting the energy and economic poverty of Africa and how this situation makes Africa most vulnerable to climate change impacts, and further noting that Africa needs support from the rest of the world in putting in place strong adaptation mechanism, cognizant that Africa needs to develop its resources, including oil and gas, to fight energy and economic poverty in Africa. Further cognizant that Africa needs a different transitional agenda, and recognizing the need for a just transition and strong commitment from all nations on the climate change targets and energy transmission from an agenda that is just, renewing our commitment to the Paris Agreement and the 1998 Kyoto Protocol, now therefore be it resolved by the Pan-African Parliament as follows. 1, that the Pan-African Parliament supports the rights of African states to develop their oil and gas resources to enable them build resilience and support their energy transition agenda. 2, that Pan-African Parliament emphasizes the fact that Africa and other developing countries must have a different transition agenda that allows them to develop their resources to deal with their pressing needs, pressing development issues, to eliminate poverty and improve resilience in our continent. 3, that Pan-African Parliament recognizes the need for African communities to access technology to support development of renewable energy solutions on the African continent. 4, that the Pan-African Parliament supports Uganda and Tanzania in its East African crude oil pipeline project. 5, that Pan-African Parliament emphasizes the need for all African countries to uphold the human rights of all peoples, and that Pan-African members of Parliament forward this resolution to their legislative assemblies and parliaments. I beg to move, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Because it was more on the legal side, resolved that, I want to give you 2 minutes to further motivate that motion. Tell what is the issue? What is the issue? So that everybody well understands what is the mischief? This motion, what is the mischief that you are trying to address?
Honourable members, I want to bring to your attention that Uganda discovered oil and started the process of extracting oil and gas in our country. The oil that has been, a huge amount of oil and gas has been discovered in our country. And we have made tremendous and enormous investments in this sector. All investment and feasibility studies have already been done. And we are now in the process of installing our refinery and also building a line, a pipeline that would evacuate oil from Uganda up to Tanga, which is at the seaport. Mr. President, in the process, recently the European Union, Parliament.
Order. I happen to know that Tanga is in Tanzania. Yeah, so some may not know where Tanga is. Thank you.
Mr. President, Tanga is a port on the coast of Tanzania. So the pipeline is going to be built from Uganda up to Tanga port to evacuate oil, crude oil that is extracted from Uganda. Recently, the European Union passed a resolution stopping holding Uganda from investing in the refinery and also in the construction of the line. Their argument was that in Uganda, the pipeline is going to pass in the forest reserve. That will disturb the peace of the elephants and animals. So in that case, Uganda should not do it because it's going to affect the peace of the animals in the forest. Secondly, they were misinformed that the people's affected, project-affected persons were not compensated. But from our record, all of them were compensated, and the country is in the process of resettling them and compensating them promptly. So in this respect, they were also saying that the European Union should stop Uganda from doing it because it will affect the carbon emission. And I wonder, because some of the countries emit more than 27%, but there are no sanctions against them. For example, America emits more than 27% of green gas emission, but there is no sanction against those countries. Even in the European countries, their contribution to green gas emission is more than 26%, but there is no sanction against them. They have never stopped them from investing in fossil oil. And therefore, Mr. President, we want to appeal to this parliament to come to our support, to support Africa's development, because this is not only on Uganda. This is covering the entire Africa. They don't want us to invest in green gas, and yet this investment can change the lives of our people. For example, we are going to get billions of dollars, and this money can be invested in education, be invested in the research, be invested in the infrastructure development, and it will improve the livelihood of our people. And this project being stopped, it will affect the development and the process of empowering our own people. And therefore, I want to appeal to the entire parliament to give us the support and allow Uganda to proceed with the extraction of our oil and gas. I beg to move, Mr. President.
Since it goes through Tanzania, and then there is another one from Uganda, I don't want this to take too long. Those that control time, can you now set it on 2 minutes? Can you set time, and those taking the floor, there will be no extensions. Once the mic goes off, it's off. Just tell us in 2 minutes what you want, what your contribution is. 2 minutes, I set the time on 2 minutes. I see Sierra Leone, I know the Gambia, Suleiman, Honorable Suleiman. Yes. No. I did not see Professor Domai.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I want to support this important motion, since in Africa as a continent we suffered a lot, and such a giant project. I think before EU goes to EU Parliament and make this decision, consultations need to be done. We are a continent that we want to move to create employment for our people, to have infrastructural development. This is our own problem. I don't think EU can have such a power to stop the process that is going on in Uganda. I give my 100% support to it.
Thank you. I see. Is that Cote d'Ivoire? No. Patrick, but then the one behind. Yes. Professor Domai, I've heard about him. Proceed.
Thank you, Honorable President. I think the issue that Uganda is facing now is what our beloved professor from South Africa said. The European powers and the West are actually want to subordinate Africa again. Africa has the right to use its natural resources. It needs to employ its young people and the African Union, as well as this parliament, has to support and stand behind Uganda to use its natural resource and pass a resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Domai, Honorable Professor Domai.
Yes, I will be a proposer since it is announced by the President. I was thinking that we should not even debate on this motion because let Uganda go ahead, let them attack.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So don't debate, it's true. I see a hand so I can see the face behind Honorable Domai. Yes. That's Zambia, eh?
This is Zambia.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think the motion is supported. I'm standing up only that I'm short. That's what they say in Zambia also. Mr. President, I wish to support the motion. I think Africa must resist any attempts by the West to stop us from exploiting our resources for the benefit of our people. They can only do that because they want to exploit our resources themselves to sustain their jobs in their continent. We resist that, and we are no longer going to allow this kind of exploitation from the West. I support the motion.
Thank you. That was under 2 minutes, which is very, very good. I want to encourage more hands, but the Honorable Patrick from Uganda, you'll be very brief. Okay. I recognize you. Let's start from there, and then we come to Honorable Patrick, Uganda. Honorable, is it Algeria? Honorable. Yes, proceed.
Your Excellency, for recognizing me as from Algeria, but I'm actually from
Namibia. Sorry.
Yes, no.
You see, your glasses are so smart, and then I placed you in the wrong country.
No problem, Your Excellency. Your Excellency, I just rise to give support to Uganda. And as Honorable Domai said, they must just attack. There is no way that climate change agenda can be used to stop our development as Africa. We cannot allow it. Right now in Sharm el-Sheikh, they are debating the question of who must pay for the pollution that was occasioned on this planet. And if we have to submit to the Western powers to say elephants are now more important, which elephants we have kept on this continent, unlike in Europe, where they have destroyed all life of animals, our own elephants for that matter, we should not allow that to happen. Conservation is not superior to human health, human well-being. Climate change agenda is not superior to our aspirations to make sure that our life and that of our future generations is secured and taken care of. So Uganda, you have our support. The only thing, Your Excellency, is that when oil prices are rising, with South Sudan here, Uganda having discovered, Angola, which is also an oil producer, why are we also not benefiting from the oil resources so that we can have preferential prices on the continent as a result of our shared benefits of the resources? But that's a discussion for another day.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Sorry, I apologize for the mistake, but I know you very well. Honorable Swartz from Swart Boy from Namibia. Thank you very much. I now move to to Honorable Patrick, and then I move here. Honorable Patrick, you can even be shorter than 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I want to take the opportunity to thank my colleague, Honorable Felix, for moving this motion. Uganda discovered this oil in 2006, and this year, this is when we got the final investment decision by two companies, Total Energies, a European company, and Sinopec, a Chinese company. They are the ones that have done serious investments in the oil sector, plus a Ugandan company, national oil company. Mr. President, whereas many Ugandans are in need of this oil, the European Parliament raised something very critical to the people of Uganda, and that is the violation of human rights. As a person, a member of Parliament from Uganda, I want us to pass this resolution knowing that if members can Google a little bit about what was raised, it is mainly on the human rights abuse by the government of Uganda. On another day, Mr. President, I want to bring also, I want to take notice to this Parliament that I will bring a motion on human rights abuse where we are experiencing abductions of the members of the opposition in that country, where we are experiencing, Mr. President,
Thank you. The 2 minutes is over. No. I said on this one, no extensions of time. And I will be very strict. On this one, there is no extension of time. It's only 2 minutes. But you said only another day, which means you want to bring this matter back to the chamber. So we wait for that day when you bring back a motion on this one. Different. Tanzania. Sorry, that's Tanzania, yes. Okay, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, when you talk of the East Africa crude oil pipeline project, you touch both countries, Tanzania and Uganda. It is an investment so far which is estimated of around $4 billion. So it is a lot of money that will be involved. But also the geographic, it will cover around 1,400 kilometers plus. Therefore, how is it likely to benefit the locals? It will bring technology, people will be also employed, but also it will raise the livelihood of the people. As in Tanzania, we are not immune to this. The late President Magufuli introduced the Rufiji electro project, which was so far to harness or to tap electricity. It was worth around 2,000 megawatts. But do you know what happened? The European went into their chambers, started debating on why they should stop the tapping of such electricity. But as Tanzanians, we refused, and we are now reaching to generating electricity. Thank you very much.
Oh, good. Thank you for that contribution. They did not talk of human rights at that time. They just wanted to block. Yes, Tanzania again.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. May I begin by quoting baba yetu wa taifa Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere alisema, the survival of our wildlife is the matter of grave concern to all of us in Africa. Akizungumza namna gani sisi kama wa Afrika
how we Africans can you know we are coming.
the late Julius Kambarage Nyerere. He said, "The survival for our wildlife is a matter of grave concern to all of us in Africa." But also we Africans, especially Uganda and Tanzania, who are sovereign nations, we understand the need and the importance of climate conservation, taking into consideration that the issues of climate change are burning issues as we speak. So, taking into consideration the importance of the project at hand, my colleague has already put into question and put before this Honorable House the data as to amount of money involved, the importance of this project to the people of Tanzania and Uganda, the economic sustainability and the development, both social and economical, that we are, as Tanzania and Uganda shall confer according to this project. We are not ready, and I hope this Honorable House shall not allow people from other continents who benefit from the backwardness of Africa and our nations to continue putting us and our nations into bars and refusing for us to use our own God-endowed natural resources to develop our own countries. So please, I hope this Honorable House shall unite with Tanzania and Uganda in refusing and passing a motion so that we can continue with the project at hand. Thank you, Honorable President.
Asante sana nashukuru.
Thank you very much.
Oh, that's Tanzania.
This is Uganda.
Uganda, sorry. Honorable Msana, eh?
Thank you, Mr. President. Honorable members, allow me to support Honorable Felix on this important motion where we see Uganda and Africa being put on a very big test on sovereignty. Honorable members, Uganda is a sovereign country. So is Africa as a continent. There is no way, honorable members, we can accept the European Union to give us directions on our own natural resources. This particular project is going to answer the most important questions the continent has been suffering, especially the socio-economic transformation, the issues that we are having like unemployment. I want to tell you that Africa is going to benefit from this big project. The East African crude oil pipeline project is going to benefit the entire African continent. We should never at any moment in time accept the European Union to give us any direction to our own resources where we have full powers and sovereignty. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Benin.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. The European Union has been kind, I would say, but their kindness is harmful to Uganda. Let me explain what I'm saying in this way. The European Union soils are not fertile, but that of Uganda is fertile. The European Union is saying, well, if your fields are fertile, if you cultivate it, you'll produce wealth. And for that reason, I will refuse that you produce. Now, if we take this to court, who is going to win? And therefore, even if resolutions are going to be rejected, that of Uganda, I believe we should stand as one and support this resolution. As His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo is going to be here very soon, we're going to ask him how they have proceeded with refining in Uganda and why not assist in Nigeria and why not assist Uganda in the same way. Thank you, Mr. President.
Dr. Gayo.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have one question to Uganda. I think you are hiding something from us. What is the percentage of Europeans in this investment? I think you gave more share to China. That's why they are refusing you to give this opportunity. And so, Excellencies, I fully agree with the honorable members who took floor before me. Africa, we need to give education to our children. We need to give health to our continent, our people. So at the same time, I would like to call upon head of states and government of Africa. I think there is no direct influence from Europe to Africa. The problem is that directly or indirectly, Europe is financing our investment in Africa. It's up to head of states and government to have African bank for African investment. Otherwise, we will be always dependent on Europe, and it won't make sense. Always we shout at them and also condemn them. For the time being, I think we will not be listened. In the Ugandan case, I do remember when
President, he deserves an extra minute.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do remember in 2013 or 14, EU and the European World Bank decided to provide $90 million to Uganda. And they came with two envelopes. One envelope full of conditions, the other envelope was full of that $90 million dollars. And they said, you will collect this money, you will take this money if you will respect human rights. And His Excellency Museveni agreed. Of course, nobody can be against human rights. They asked him, oh, you respect human rights. That human right is minority right. Minority right is a gay right. You should respect gay rights. You should incorporate in your constitutions. Then Museveni said, on my dead body, I cannot do. You cannot buy my integrity, my personality with your $90 million. You should go. You can go hell with that money, he said. Now, today, also Uganda. Of course, you need to work with the head of states, with the people of Africa, and also we are gonna talk to European Union. Hope we are going in December to European Union Bureau and the chairpersons. We will raise that issue in that platform, and we will assist you. We will stand by you. I thank you, Your Excellency.
Thank you. We move. There was moved to adopt. Who seconds? Honorable Suleiman.
I rise to second.
Thank you. So motion seconded for adoption. Yes, you show acclamation so that we support. The last motion for this morning, a resolution calling for the immediate lifting of unilateral economic sanctions imposed on the Zimbabwe government by the United States, the United Kingdom, and the European Union. Who is the mover, by the way? Honorable Mbo. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm rising for this specific resolution calling for the immediate lifting of the unilateral economic sanctions imposed on Zimbabwe government by the United States, the United Kingdom, and the European Union. Mr. President, I hereby, in terms of Rule 61, submit that this House notes that the economic, financial, and trade sanctions unilaterally imposed on Zimbabwe by the United States of America, the United Kingdom, and the European Union since 2002 have great repercussions not only to the country's economy and the fundamental rights of the Zimbabwean people, but the entire SADC region, which continues to reel from the catastrophic effects of these sanctions. Deeply concerned that these unjustified unilateral sanctions have grave and untenable egregious impact to women, children, and ordinary citizens of the country. Referring to the World Summit on Sustainable Development in 2015 and the unanimous adoption of Agenda 2034 Sustainable Development, which emphasized inter alia the absolute rejection of the unilateral cohesive measures by the international community. Further noting that these unilateral sanctions have serious impact on Africa's Agenda 2063 goals and priority areas, in particular Goal 6, which calls for the member states to strive for Africa whose development is people-driven, especially its women and youth, and caring for the children. Supporting the resolution of the SADC heads of state and government demanding the immediate lifting of the economic sanction unilaterally imposed against the government of Zimbabwe and its people by the US and the EU, agrees with the SADC heads of state that these sanctions have not only affected the people of Zimbabwe and their government, but the entire region, which continues to be the recipients of the negative and the atrocious effects of these sanctions. Acknowledging that the government of Zimbabwe, under the president of Emmerson Mnangagwa, under President Emmerson Mnangagwa, has opened a new chapter and is ready to constructively engage with the rest of the world. Therefore, the current unilateral sanctions by the US, Britain, and the EU are unnecessary, and they harm the innocents, counterproductive to the regional efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. Recognizing and appreciating the PAP's gallant and heroic campaign in 2016, which led to the successful uplifting of economic sanctions imposed by the United States of America on Sudan since 2007. Noting Africa's long-standing principle of solidarity, long-standing practice, which enjoins Africa to adopt common positions on issues which affect the continent, and the Pan-African Parliament slogan of One Africa, One Voice in resolving challenges. Therefore, it resolves that this House debate and adopt this motion calling for the immediate lifting of economic sanctions unilaterally imposed by the United States, United Kingdom, and the European Union on the government and the people of Zimbabwe. The lifting of these unilateral economic sanctions will enable the government of Zimbabwe to attract foreign direct investment, which will serve as a catalyst for economic recovery, which is so needed to meet the expectation of its citizens. Mr. President, I beg to move.
All right, a seconder to motivate. Honorable Stars Mate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I as a Zimbabwean, I stand to second the motion raised by Mbowa on sanctions against Zimbabwe. As Zimbabwe, we are against the imposition of unilateral sanctions that were coercive measures against Zimbabwe. As this is contrary to the United Nations Charter, unilateral sanctions have never worked to solve any situation in the continent. On the contrary, sanctions unleash untold humanitarian crisis and the suffering of the ordinary people of Zimbabwe, having been victims of unilateral sanctions for over 20 years. I fully understand their harmful effects and would not wish them to happen to any state or anyone. Our wish is to see a fair, just and equitable playground in the international relations. Zimbabwe has lost well over US 42 billion in revenue over the past 19 years because of the sanctions. We are very grateful that the continent has taken up a step, and that is why we are all up as a continent on the 25th of October every year, shouting against the anti-sanctions. If there were no sanctions in Zimbabwe, as what our detractors say, why would the region rally together for an anti-sanction day and anti-sanction crusade? Sanctions are evil. They hinder development. They cripple economy and the development. They close lines of credit. Socio-economic development is crippled. Lines of credit and
Sorry, your mic. Yeah, you are on 2 minutes, of course. Thank you. There are people that have registered to speak. On this one, three. I have three, but if you are planning to speak, you can raise your hand. Honorable Lamali Beja of Algeria.
شكرا سيد الرئيس على الفرصة. الدكتورة العمالي بهجة من سيادة الدولة الجزائرية.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I would like to speak on this topic, the sanctions imposed on our brothers and sisters of Zimbabwe by Europe and America. Zimbabwe has experienced terrible economic hardship since this embargo, and it has experienced a lot of problems in terms of fuel supply, basic necessities, and we absolutely must lift the sanctions which force banks to prevent Zimbabwe from taking out loans. It blocks the Zimbabwean economy, and it corners Zimbabwe. It is an infringement on the rights of Zimbabwe, and we need to stand together to demand the lifting of this boycott and these sanctions against Zimbabwe. I wish that we could vote, that we had legislative powers already at the Pan-African Parliament so that we could vote on this. We need to give Zimbabwe back its economic freedom. It needs to have the freedom to be able to benefit from its great natural wealth. And as African countries, we need to stand up against these sanctions imposed by Europe and America and some of the other countries in the international community.
Honorable Lloyd Kasingo.
Thank you, Honorable President. I stand to second the motion. As from Namibia, I'm equal a victim of these sanctions because we all know, as the mover has stated, that the sanctions against Zimbabwe didn't only negatively affect the livelihood of the people in Zimbabwe, but the neighboring SADC member state. Namibia is one of them. We hosted our brothers and sisters in Namibia from Zimbabwe for economic and social reasons. Henceforth, we must really stand together here at the PAP to condemn these sanctions and to call upon it to be lifted with immediate effect. The day after yesterday, we were talking about the intertrade. You cannot talk the intertrade in Africa if one of the member states is under the sanctions. Henceforth, because of time, in addition to the recommendation, I would like also, because we cannot just say we move, we must also, as a parliamentary, as a continental parliament, I would like to propose that we choose a group of people to go to AU, to go to SADC head of state, SADC PF, and European Union, so that we can have serious discussions to end the sanctions. We are happy today. We have His Excellency Obasanjo. Today, we are going to tell him to say we are not happy. Henceforth, he must sensitize his people there at the AU level. Can I have a second? Because I'm a second.
A second. If it's a second, it's okay. A second.
Yeah. To go to his to the head of state to say they must move with immediate effects to the end of the sanctions against Zimbabwe. I beg to move.
Honorable Bideli May I also announce that any minute from now we may be told that the Honorable His Excellency Obasanjo may be arriving, which means we'll have to suspend proceedings. So those that are speaking, can you now take just 1 minute so that everybody has a chance? Thank you.
Thank you, Right Honorable President. I want to join those that support the motion. And I want to mention here that Zimbabwe at one time was a superpower in Africa, and indeed a leader in education, industrialization, agriculture, and other sectors of the economy. Unfortunately, since the economic sanctions were effected, the economy of that country has been affected, resulting in very high unemployment levels and poverty, as well as lack of finances to support development. This has turned Zimbabwe into a begging nation from a superpower, and the majority of its citizens are migrating to neighboring countries, as has been mentioned. So this has had an effect on the socio-economic development of Zimbabwe, causing untold suffering for the people of Zimbabwe. So this really must be stopped, and therefore I support the motion. Thank you, I submit.
Honorable Muntaka.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I will be very brief. The violation, the sanction was as a result of what the three blocs, the United States, European Union, and the United Kingdom deemed as violation of human rights, government policies and actions that impede democracy, rule of law, and respect for human and property rights. These were the reason for the sanction. Colleagues, whereas I agree that unilateral sanctions on countries affect the dignity and the ordinary citizen in the country, we must also be we must look within us in a self-respect to see some of our own actions that molest our own and try to prevent those things from happening. Because see, it is not good to just say, don't do sanction, but when you see brutality happening within us, then we keep quiet. We should condemn both, where we agree that sanctions are bad for the country, but we also agree that among us, we must treat each other right. I want to hope that Zimbabwe will take all the necessary steps to ensure that the rights of its citizens and opposition are also guaranteed. Give space for people to be able to air their view. It is the only way we can be the kind of Africa we want. But I surely condemn sanctions that affect ordinary citizens. And I want to encourage the US and the others to target individuals rather than target the whole country. Because if you think Muntaka is the one creating problem in Ghana, target Muntaka and put sanctions on Muntaka. Don't put it on Ghana. And I also want to urge the President, on your trip to Europe, especially the European Union, let's make this an issue. We did that in Sudan in, I think, 2017. We went to the US Congress, PAP, and it resulted, we got a result. Let's do same, and I'm sure when we do that, it will help us all. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you, Honorable Janet Kabila. Okay.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the floor. We all know, as the Honorable Muntaka has just said, that the sanctions on Zimbabwe, how did they start? It was because of the land reform program, which was at the center of it all. Honorable President, the USA imposed the sanctions in 2001, and it was followed by the European Union in 2002. It's 20 long years, Honorable President, that our African people of Zimbabwe have been suffering. Why are these sanctions illegal? They violate the fundamentals of Article 41 of that states that sanctions can only be decided on by the United Nations Security Council. Cognizant to this resolution 39/2010 of December 1984 of the UNGA, United Nations General Assembly, which called on development countries to refrain from, I quote, threatening or applying trade restrictions, blockades, embargoes, and other economic sanctions against developing countries as a form of political and economic coercion which affects their economy and political and social development, unquote. We see that these powerful countries are using unilateral sanctions to undermine the development of our countries. Honorable President, I agree with the members who spoke before me that we should involve ourselves as we did in 2017.
Yes, 2 seconds, 2 seconds.
That we should, with the Pan-African Parliament, should involve ourselves as we did in 2017 in the lobbying of the uplifting of sanctions of Sudan. I think we should do the same with this European Union. It can be the World Bank, because Zimbabwe cannot get credit from the World Bank. We know our economies cannot function without some credits from the World Bank and other financial institutions. So even if we are saying that we are targeting people, I'm finalizing, Honorable Speaker, even if we're saying that we are targeting people, but it's not only targeting people, individuals, but they are targeting the financial institution of the country, which is affecting the whole economic of the country and the integration of our African continent. So I support and I ask we resolve to involve ourselves in the uplifting of the sanctions of the Pan-African Parliament, I say. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The Honorable Abdullah Herman Salek.
غير موجود. هل ممكن
He is not here, Mr. President. May I please take his place?
Please, if you speak only for 1 minute.
فقط أريد أن أنضم.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to support the colleagues who have supported the motion. We stand in solidarity with the African people, and we need to support one another, and we need to confront these sanctions, and we really need to unmask what is behind these sanctions that are against human rights and against the rights of our people. We have to confront it, and we have to unmask those that impose these sanctions. Thank you very much. We support.
Thank you. 1 minute. Very good. Quick. Professor Matole, 1 minute.
The imposition of sanctions on Zimbabwe, as my sister from the DRC said, is contrary to international law, which guarantees the right of peoples and nations to political, social, and economic freedom. These sanctions are a crime against the people of Zimbabwe, especially women and children. These sanctions are also creating xenophobia between the Zimbabweans, South Africans, and other neighboring countries. So these sanctions must stop. They are illegal, and also I suggest this matter falls under the jurisdiction of the UN, and it must also be escalated there, because these colonialists have no power to decide how we should solve our problem. The AU, SADC can deal with these matters, and not Europeans. We don't want them here. Otherwise, we must consider nationalizing all their properties and their businesses in Africa if they are going to continue interfering with our lives.
Thank you, Honorable Professor. With your permission, let me join the President to receive His Excellency Obasanjo for a few minutes. Thank you. Okay, I'm advised to finalize this issue. Let me put the motion to adoption. Thank you. Thank you. The motion is adopted. So with your permission, I will go to, I will, no, it will not adjourn. No, it's okay.
Les interventions en plénière, mais alors que c'est
Honorable members. Honorable members. His Excellency, no, please remain seated. Sorry, remain seated. Just to inform you that His Excellency, the former President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Olusegun Obasanjo, has arrived. He's in the holding room with your President. They'll be joining you in a couple of minutes. You are all advised to remain seated, remain in the chamber, because they'll be joining you very shortly. Thank you. Honorable members, His Excellency President Olusegun Obasanjo, former President of the Republic of Nigeria.
We can take our seats. May I welcome a great personality, a hero on this continent of Africa, His Excellency, former President of Nigeria. We honor him, retired General Olusegun Obasanjo. Your Excellency, in this chamber are the parliamentarians from across the continent of Africa. Your 55 countries, represented by 5 MPs from each country. I may not need to get into details about the composition of this parliament because we feel privileged this morning that you were president of Nigeria when the establishment of Pan-African Parliament was conceived. And it was conceived and established, launched when you were president yourself. So you made a lot of input. You know even better than ourselves why Pan-African Parliament was established. I'll also say that people like yourself who were present, who started drawing on papers and say, what should it look like? How many members per country? And you were there. Because mainly PAP initial idea was conceived in Abuja, 1991, in your country. And then you took over from there until it was launched in 2004. And so for that matter, we likely to benefit a lot this morning from your understanding of Pan-African Parliament. And what are the issues today? But I will hasten to say the people that launched this parliament, like yourself, I can even comfortably say all of them are either retired or they have responded to the calling of God. They are no longer there. So we are lucky to have a person like you who was there. Most of them that are here today, whether heads of states, whether foreign ministers, called the Executive Council, at the AU, whether PRC, the Permanent Representative Council, the ambassadors, when we ask for space to function as a parliament, rules, budget, most of them ask, what is this PAP about? What is PAP about? Because they were not there when you were there. You will work to assist us how PAP should be strengthened and supported. We'll actually appeal to you to find the mechanisms or frameworks through which we can have the heads of state on this continent, the Assembly of the Union, the foreign ministers, to get to, and the ambassadors to understand that PAP, establishment of PAP and the existence of PAP is inescapable. You cannot, PAP is indispensable to the AU. There can be no union or organs of PAP without the AU without a parliament. But we are at a very critical stage now. We started off well celebrated with your effort when you were still president. We had a budget of about 22 million annual budget. Today we have half of that, exactly at 11 million. Because people, when they allocate money, they ask, what is this PAP about? Do we need it? You are one of those who know why we need Pan-African Parliament. This morning, before you came in, celebrating your coming, just to warm up the ground and the chamber, we had 5 motions that were debated and resolved on. We, first of all, celebrated your effort, which has produced very good results in Ethiopia. We know you are the chief negotiator. How you did it is what we may benefit from this morning. That it was good news across Africa, across the world, that you managed to lead the negotiations, and now there's a peace agreement in Ethiopia, cessation of hostilities. That is great news. We are very privileged. I don't think we've addressed such an audience after the agreement. We are the most privileged today that you'll address Pan-African Parliament. And I believe that the media, I think the media, you have sharpened your instruments. There should be clear pictures, very clear pictures of what is is happening this morning. It's a great day. So we'll hear from you the issue of Ethiopia as we celebrate, all of us in Africa. We also debated and resolved on the issue of terrorism in Mozambique, which again you are aware of, that we have terrorists now in Southern Africa, in Mozambique. A motion was moved, and we have resolved to condemn, and that we all unite and support Mozambique to flush out that terrorism. That we did, and we accomplished this morning. We also have an issue in Uganda, where Uganda wants to, they've discovered oil, and they are setting up a pipeline from Kampala to a port called Tanga in Tanzania. And the EU, European Union, as usual, have debated that issue, not on this land, but somewhere else, and say no, that pipeline passes through several forests. So in terms of climate and conservation, that project should not proceed. Some of the contradictions in Africa. We also debated the sanctions on Zimbabwe. Since 2001, by the USA, Europe, and smaller other countries somewhere. One day we'll have time to brief you that the issue of sanctions in Zimbabwe is misunderstood. I come from there, I'm a chief from there. The only one reason why sanctions were imposed is the issue of land which was taken from the former colonial settlers. Nothing else. We started taking land in 2000. The sanctions came in 2001. And then in 2. You can see the link in terms of year. Why didn't the sanctions come in 1991 before we started back on the land reform program? Why not in 97? Why should it come in just after we have taken land? So the link is very clear. And I don't want to go too far. You should know that 4,000 whites owned 75% of the land against the 16 million Zimbabwe. That's what I mean. 4,000 whites owned 80% of the land. All the good land. And we couldn't sit and just watch. So maybe one day you will ask us to give you maps and the displacements that were caused to Africans. There's a fourth one. Which other motion? Right. The fifth motion, DRC. Again, I think you have a task on this continent because there is conflict between DRC and Rwanda today. It's now common knowledge that there is some conflict going on between the DRC and Rwanda. I won't go into details, but we did discuss and debate. And those are some of the areas that you may be invited to assist. Last Wednesday, Your Excellency, we spent the whole day in this chamber on the issue of unconstitutional changes of governments on this continent. And you know better, I can tell you that is Burkina Faso, Mali, Guinea Conakry, you know the geography of what is happening on the continent. We also feel privileged that with your experience, you may want to comment also after doing Ethiopia and other cases. Then you also look at the issue of Pan-African Parliament, which I've mentioned, and the issue of why is it that the coups are back on the continent? And they've come even much worse than before. Because in the past there could be a coup, then we say, well, go back to civilian government, and it ended. Now the coup, another second coup comes against the coup. So this is a new phenomenon, a worse of feature, which actually delays election. Because there are the coup makers, when they go for 2-3 years, when you expect them now to go back to civilian government, another group comes in and takes over. It also wants another 5 years before there are elections. So we have a problem, and our own people are crying. In Sudan, you are aware that there are some envoy that was sent there to try and find peace. People are demonstrating, saying, we don't want these envoys, especially these sent by the UN, who are foreign to our situation on the continent. Let me end here and say, I think I have given you the topography of the business this morning. You can add more. Naturally, I would have left out something. I now, before I actually call you upon, can we stand up in his honor? We stand up in his honor and we clap as I invite him to take the podium.
Thank you. Thank you. Please sit down. Mr. President, Vice Presidents, distinguished parliamentarians, members of Pan-African Parliament. Let me begin by thanking the President first for giving me the opportunity of addressing you as a citizen of this great continent, and for giving me the opportunity to be able to share some of my views, ideas, experiences with you. Mr. President, I thank you for this unique opportunity. Of course, I've been wanting to be here with you for quite some time. And my sister, Margaret, who is here, had been trying to make me get here to be able to talk to you. And in fact, my being here today, she had contributed immensely to it. Margaret. Of course, let me congratulate the new officers of PAP. You have just been in for 4 months. 4 months. Well, in my part of the world, there's a saying that whenever you get to the farm is when your morning begins. So I'm coming to the farm late and my morning is beginning. So I congratulate you for what the President had mentioned, what you were doing this morning and what you did last week, the motions that you passed, the issues that you have deliberated upon, seem to have captured the points that I will be going over. But before I get to those points, you will permit me that I should make us refresh our minds about the history of Pan-African Parliament. And it is necessary as a result of the points that the President has been making this morning, that it's like that story in the Bible, if you will permit me, where the king of Egypt of old, needed to get somebody to interpret his dreams, and they got Joseph. And Joseph interpreted the dream perfectly, and Pharaoh was impressed, and he said, well, since you have interpreted the dreams, not only interpreting the dreams, you have advice on what should be done. then you are the one to do the job. And Joseph, a slave, became the prime minister in Egypt. And he did the job exceedingly well. Then came another pharaoh who did not know Joseph. And things started to happen to the descendants of Joseph. And I think one may say what is happening to PAP is similar to that. Like you said, the founding fathers, those that are still alive, are getting old, if they are not old. And the ones that are coming in don't know why PAP is here. And it's part of the point that I will be making in my discussion with you this morning. Was there a need for PAP's existence? Was there a need for it? And if there was a need, when, why, and how? As the President rightly pointed out, I happen to be there at one or two of the important dates and times in the history of PAP. 2 or 3 dates are significant and critical in the history of PAP. One is Abuja Treaty of 1991, when it was simply listed. PAP was listed among organization bodies and stated, and I quote, "In order to ensure that the people of Africa are fully involved in the economic development and integration of the continent," even as far back as 1991. That was the reason given for listing PAP as one of the bodies. Then came what was called Sati Declaration of 1999. The treaty establishing the African Union and economic community of Africa. And then the protocol establishing PAP was adopted in 2000 during the OAU summit in Lome, Togo. So strictly speaking, your institution have been in existence for over 21 years. If we have had it established by the founding fathers for that long, and it was made clear, even when it was first thought about, that it will ensure that the people of Africa are fully involved in the economic development and integration of the continent. Is that not necessary today? Is it not needed today that the people of Africa should be involved in the economic development and the integration of their continent? If that was necessary in 1991 and 1999, it's even more so today. And I think that is where we should begin and tell our brothers and sisters who are now riding the horse in Addis Ababa or wherever else they are riding the horse, to say that this institution is not an unnecessary institution. It is an institution that should be part and parcel of the instrument that will lead us to the promised land. I think that is the beginning. Let's remind and refresh their memories about the history up to a point. Okay, I will say, for me, for this occasion, enough about history. Then, in more detail, why PAP? A number of objectives were annotated at the inception. And let me go through some of them. One, implementing the policies and objectives of AU. You, as an institution, as an organization, as an arm of the AU, you are charged with the implementation of policies and objectives of AU. If that was there at the inception, at the beginning, it's not there today. Two, to make sure that member states adhere to good governance, transparency, and accountability. That's part of the objective of your institution. And if that was inscribed at inception, that is more so today. And because, Mr. President, you want me to say something about the resurgence of coups and counter-coups. I will come to that, but part of it must be because member states are not firmly adhering to good governance, transparency, and accountability. Third, in the objectives annotated, cultivate human rights and democracy in Africa. Fourth, let the people of Africa know what the objectives and policies of AU are for them to integrate themselves continentally. 5, engender peace, security, and stability on the continent. And I will come back to that in some details, because you want me to give a little bit of report on what we have been doing in the Horn of Africa in general, but in Ethiopia in particular, since I was appointed High Representative of the Horn of Africa for the AU Commission. 6, promote self-reliance and economic recovery to make African people more prosperous. 7, engender cooperation and development in Africa. 8, strengthen a sense of solidarity and build common destiny among the people of Africa. 9, create cooperation among regional economic communities and other members in the Parliament. Well, these objectives that were stated by the founding fathers are as relevant when your institution was established as they are today. In fact, today they are actually more relevant than they were in my time. Looking at your scoreboard and doing so dispassionately, how do you think you place in these 9 objectives that I have listed? How have we performed? And brothers and sisters, we may have reasons, maybe to some extent, but when we look at where we are and how we are, in fact, I must say that when the President reported to me and said it here, what you have been doing this morning and what you did yesterday, last week, I felt that maybe I shouldn't blame you as I had intended to blame you. Maybe you have done a little bit more than I thought you were doing. That, of course, there is still a lot of room for improvement. And I will not want to rely on excuses for your not performing as I believe you should have performed, or what I would call inadequate performance. But you have power, and don't let anybody curtail your power. You have power to discuss, to examine, or express an opinion on any matter, either on your own initiative or at the request of the Assembly or any other policy organs, and make any recommendation you may deem fit and necessary. And that is not power that should be underrated. You have the power to examine, and that is from what you have reported you have done this morning. That is what you have done. In the case of Zimbabwe, that's what you have done. In the case of terrorism, that's what you have done. In the case of on constitutional government changes. That's what you have done. Maybe when you do these things, you need to shout them loud and clear so that all of us can appreciate some of the things you are doing more than we have done in the past. You have power. And if you make the people who should support you to understand and to realize what you are doing, I'm sure they will start changing their mind in a positive way for your institution. You have power to discuss your budget and the budget of the community. Don't let me, and you must not give that power to anybody. You have power to discuss your own budget. Of course, don't do what some parliaments are doing in our countries. They take care of themselves more than they look after other people as far as the budget is concerned. You have power to look at your budget and, of course, also the budget of the community. It's not the budget of, it's not the community alone that should dish things out to you. You should also have a voice, and that is part of the power you have. You have power to work towards the harmonization or coordination of the laws and regulations of the member states, particularly with Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement. This is a job that you should have taken on from the date the agreement on Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement was made. Because there will be need a lot for coordination of laws, coordination of regulations, so that we do not have multi-dimensional laws, and for somebody who wants to import to Africa can go through one regulation and one law. And that, if you take that up and take it up seriously, people will realize that you are doing something. You have power, which you may either not fully realize, or you fully realize that handicapped one form or the other. And you must get yourself out of that handicap. And to the extent that you do not utilize your power to achieve the objectives that are set out when your institution was established, you will